Greetings. My name is Letitia Hensley, and I'm the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools Director of Family and Community Engagement. We are excited that you are joining us today and know you will gain great insight from this session. At the conclusion of today's session, please provide feedback so that we can continue to support you with amazing sessions that will be provided throughout the year. Now, without further ado, we'll turn it over to our presenters.
Welcome CMS families to our Financial Literacy for Stronger Futures, K-12 and beyond. I'm excited to connect you with Ms. Crystal Hsu, our Economic and Personal Finance Specialist in CMS.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, taking time out of your day to learn a little bit more about financial literacy. What does that look like in CMS, and how does that work together with the other academic content areas to build stronger futures for your students in K-12 and beyond. As Molly shared, I'm Crystal Hsu. I am the Economic and Personal Finance, and I have EPF there in parentheses. We're going to talk about EPF a lot later on, specialist for CMS, and my email is there. We'll share the slide deck later in the chat. If after this, if you have any questions, anything I can help connect you with, please feel free to reach out via email. That is the best way to get in touch with me. Just a couple of slides to help navigate us today. The first is translation support. If you do need any translation support, in the top right corner, click captions. There'll be an icon there for captions. And then click Show Live Captions. And then from that, you'll have a drop-down where you can select which language you need for translation in the drop-down. If you have any questions about that, you can throw them in the chat and Molly can help navigate that. How to engage. In the top right corner, you'll see a Q&A icon. You can click on that and type your question in the box. Questions will be monitored. If there is something that needs maybe a lengthier answer, we'll wait till the end. We'll also have a few minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A as well. Also, feel free to share your reactions during the presentation. I don't have all your beautiful faces on my screen, so I would love an applause, a thumbs up, a heart. I may ask for some reactions along the way just to help me navigate where to go next in our presentation. And last slide for the intro here, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback. You will be entered for a $100 gift card into a raffle. The winner will be contacted via email on Friday, April 25th. The link is there at the bottom. Again, we'll share the slide deck, so all the links that you see today, you can access after the presentation in the slide deck. Again, this slide just talks about our mission, our vision, our goals, our core beliefs here in CMS. If you are familiar with our strategic plan, 2024 to 2029, we have district goals right there in the middle of this screen. And for today, we're very specifically talking about financial literacy. So you might not see it directly in this slide, but it is one of our overall, it helps support our overall goal for having students be ready and be successful in life after CMS and post-secondary education. And what we talk about today will help support them while they're in school and especially after they graduate. Little disclaimer, actually big disclaimer, this is not financial advice. Unfortunately, I am not a financial advisor. I can't give you any financial advice, but I am a former high school social studies teacher. I serve as the EPF specialist that I mentioned earlier. I'm currently funded through a grant with Michael Jordan and the Jordan brand and facilitated by Next Gen Personal Finance. You may see or hear me say NGPF. In education, we love to use a lot of acronyms. So if I ever do, I'll say what it is first. And I'm very passionate about how personal finance or personal financial literacy can be used as a lever to positively change the trajectory of our students' futures. There is a little plug at the bottom about the grant. This is the third year of the grant that we have here with CMS. There were 12 other urban districts in the United States that were part of this financial equity and empowerment grant. I work closely with those 12 other cohort members so that we can share ideas, share resources. And there is a little link there to a news story when we first got the grant if you want to read more about it. So I'm going to just jump right into the why. Why is this important? TNTP, the New Teacher Project, has done a few studies. One of their more recent studies looked at economic and social mobility and what is the biggest, or what are some of the biggest things that impact positive economic and social mobility for students. Over on the right, you'll see kind of a peach colored box with 4 of the biggest things that they found can have an impact. I'm not going to read them all to you, but I will touch on each one briefly. And they looked at students from several large districts, and they did a longitudinal study following them all the way from 1997 into adulthood. So of the young people experience poverty in adolescence, very few experience meaningful economic or social mobility in adulthood. Unfortunately, especially here in Charlotte, we don't have great factors that impact positive social and economic mobility. It sounds very crash, but we kind of put this number 1 into a short phrase. And you may have heard others say this, that if you're born poor in Charlotte, you'll probably die poor in Charlotte. And that just is a really tough way of saying we have some things to work on to make sure that we have better economic and social mobility for our children here in Charlotte. The second factor they looked at were strong academic outcomes made mobility much more likely. And this, in addition to an earlier survey TNTP did, we really in CMS looked at that as a call to action. This is where we can impact the trajectory of our students through strong academic outcomes, especially in high school. Their odds of earning a living wage by 30 rose to 6 in 10. And those who need a strong academic foundation were the least likely to get the means to build one. And that is not just in Charlotte, that was across the country. But just 1 in 10 young people experienced poverty had experiences that led to strong academic outcomes, and 1/3 of the rate of their more affluent peers. And again, strong academic outcomes alone didn't outweigh the effects of poverty. And so all of this to say, and in the studies linked on the slides, if you want to dig deeper into it, all of this to say is this is true for Charlotte, but we're working on it and we're making positive strides. I see Charlotte as a city and also CMS as part of that work. Here are just a couple of news articles. In the first study they did, we were dead last, 50 out of 50 in the cities that they looked at. However, the new study that's pretty recent, within the last 9 months or so, we've moved up to 38. So we are making some positive strides. And again, things are hyperlinked here. You can look at in deeper extent later. But why it matters. And that is that last sentence there on the slide. Children born in Charlotte have increasing opportunities and a greater chance to rise out of poverty today than they did in previous generations, according to the research. So we're making strides to change that that link between being born in Charlotte and poverty and never being able to move and have that economic mobility that we want for every Charlotte resident. One way we're working on this is to ensure students in K-12 receive instruction on financial literacy. I've heard from when I took this job, I heard from so many friends, family, oh, I wish I would have had a class like that in high school. Or why didn't they teach us how to do this before we graduated? So I'm just going to dig into like when we start presenting economic principles and ideas around financial literacy to our students. But first, I always love to break down and have a common understanding about the language that we're going to be using through the slides today. What is financial literacy? If you Googled or Siri or Alexa, what is financial literacy? You'll find a million different definitions, but the ones we're going to kind of focus with and work with today is that finance is just a broad term to describe the study of systems of money investment and other financial instruments. It's not just money. When we ask our seniors that take this EPF course I'll talk about in a little bit, one of the first questions is, what's finance? And they're like, money. Yes, but it's also other instruments that affect our economy and affect your finances. Literacy, just as we talk about in our ELA and younger grades and English and higher, it's the ability to read, write, speak, and listen in a way that lets us communicate effectively and make sense of the world. Not just reading. You need to talk about it. You need to be able to write about it. You need to be able to listen and comprehend what's going on. So if we put those two terms together, finance or financial literacy, I like the definition that the National Financial Educators Council uses, and that is financial literacy is possessing the skills and knowledge on financial matters to confidently take effective action that best fulfills an individual's personal, family, and global community goals. Other terms you may hear me use today is personal finance, which we kind of put that together with financial literacy. Just as the name indicates, it's the knowledge and understanding to make informed financial decisions that best affect a person's goals, whatever they may be. I always tell my teachers when I'm supporting them in the work is that personal finance is personal. So you're talking about what are your goals, long and short-term financial goals. Life happens, goals may change, but we want to have the knowledge and skills to make sure our students have the knowledge and skills to know if life happens and I need to change my goal, I know the resources out there. I know what are some of the best financial decisions I can make in this particular situation that life has thrown at us. What is your current financial reality? For every student, for everybody on this call today, your financial reality is yours. And it's okay, whatever it is. And a couple of slides later, we'll talk about it's never too early and it's never too late to make your financial literacy and your personal finance a priority. But we have to look at it in reality and do like a reality check sometimes on our finances. And if you even have the news on for 30 seconds in the last few days, you may have heard about tariffs in the stock market and your 401k and retirement. So, those are things that can really impact you meeting your long and short-term goals. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. And then I also stress to our teachers, what works for you may not work for someone else, or what works for your student's family may not work for another family. And a lot of that comes in, around your age. I'll share my age-ish. Retirement is closer than not. So my financial goals are changing because retirement is more of a short-term goal than it was a long-term goal 25, 30 years ago. But when your family, it can change on beliefs and culture, customs, whatever, is a part of the creation of your goals that align with your beliefs or culture. So we really stress, we're not trying to persuade our students. We're just giving them the information and the knowledge to make smart decisions that align with their goals. And that may be tied to beliefs or culture, etc. Economics, you'll hear that as I talk about EPF, economics and personal finance. It is the study of how people make choices to allocate scarce resources to satisfy their unlimited wants and needs. That term, we start talking about economics in kindergarten. So this is the EPF course is a 12th grade course, which I'll get to again in later slides, but it is not the first time that your students have talked about economics or heard terms that relate to personal finance. Here is just K through 5 social studies. I will note that economics, personal finance, these topics land in your student social studies course, K-12. Now, they may hear those terms in other courses, such as even in math, if they talk about compounding interest or something like that. Or you may, read a passage in language arts that ties to the Great Depression, and economic terms may be used in there. But we really focus on the skills and knowledge around economics and personal finance in our social studies courses. Starting in kindergarten, we start talking to your students about the basics, needs and wants. I remember as a kid going to the grocery store, I thought I needed everything that was in the checkout aisle as we're waiting. My mother quickly reminded me, no, you just want all that stuff. You do not need it. So we start having conversations with kindergartners about what you need versus what you want, and what does that look like in your community and in the world as a greater perspective. In first grade, we start talking about making those economic decisions. We talk about how does the government decide how to spend the money that they receive from taxpayers? We talk about making decisions around what am I going to spend my money on, talking about budgeting, even in first grade. We get to second grade, we talk about, again, decision making, but based on resource availability. And that resource availability is the word scarcity that we talked about in our economic definition. Third grade, we talk about local economies. Fourth grade, we go a little broader and talk about North Carolina and the economics of North Carolina, including trade. We talk about what natural resources we have here in North Carolina. We talk about areas of North Carolina and how geography affects the economy in different areas. And then fifth grade, it is kind of a national perspective where we look at how the nation makes decisions and the importance of personal responsibility. This is just a quick little example. Again, you can click on this when you get the slide deck. Kindergarten, we have a lot of stories that we can connect and do some read alouds with our students. And I have it in there twice, sorry about that. But this is a read aloud done about Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. And the story talks about things like needs, wants, goods and services, earn, money, job. The slide below, or the picture below, is the vocabulary words that your kindergarten students will be working with in kindergarten. And we'll talk a little bit later on another slide about how to support your students in having that knowledge around their own personal finance as they continue through. But using these words, we use the terms or concepts with our students all the time at home, but throwing in the actual economic term can help them as they go through K-12 and beyond to be financially literate. So when you're talking about I want, this pair of Jordans or whatever it may be, you can talk about, do you want it? Do you need it? Is it a need or a want? And that pair of Jordans is a good. We call that a good. It's things that we eat, wear, use, something you can touch, something tangible. And services is kind of the opposite. It's anything that we pay for that help keep us, help us to live, keep us safe, provide goods, anything like going to a restaurant, police, EMT, the service industry in general, hotels, entertainment, those kind of things. So you can start using these terms very early. Even if they can't necessarily name it, children learn early what money is, and sometimes they don't always connect it with the value or where it comes from. So you can start, chore charts, whatever it might be, to help them learn how you earn money and the value of money, and that rolls into savings and budgeting, which we'll talk about in higher grades. But again, I mentioned it's not too early to start. Your kindergartners know these things. We just might not use the actual academic vocabulary attached to it. In 5th grade, I jumped K-5 because I'm not going to do every grade level just because of time. But just to show you the progression, that in 5th grade, we're talking again about the importance of responsibility. In this case, economic responsibility or financial responsibility. Some key vocabulary words in this unit are scarcity, producer, consumer, and opportunity cost. Again, due to time, I'm not going to play all these videos, but these are good examples of quick YouTube videos that you can even share with your students when they're talking about some of these terms. I was on a webinar earlier this week where everything was tied into Taylor Swift. It was the Taylor Swift and how she impacted the economy of cities, of countries during her Eras tour. And all of these terms were in there. Scarcity. We were talking about a limited number of tickets that were available and what that scarcity did to the price of tickets. So it's an easy concept, and we use it all the time. We just don't necessarily use the academic vocabulary tied to it. We don't. You probably didn't hear a lot of people talking about, oh, Taylor Swift tickets are very scarce, but we all knew that there were not enough tickets to meet the needs of people that wanted those tickets. Producer, consumer, again, students learn the concepts early, but they may not tie them to the terms. People that are selling goods and services are producers. People that are using or buying those goods and services are consumers. Most of the time, we are consumers, but you can talk about, these concepts. They're real life. Again, if you turn the news on for longer than 30 seconds, you may hear some of this tied to recent current events. And opportunity cost. This gets into a little higher economic principle and concept. Is the value lost from the second best choice that could have been chosen but was not chosen? The definition can be a little tricky, but basically, I always told my students, everybody has 2 things that are scarce, or really one thing that is scarce, and that is time. No matter how much money you have, we all have 24 hours in the day. How are we going to use those 24 hours? So knowing that everyone's time is limited, students may need to make a choice. Do I go play with my friends for an hour, or do I study for an hour because I have a big test coming up the next day? The value lost from whatever you didn't choose is your opportunity cost. So if I decided as a student, I'm going to study for my test tomorrow, my opportunity cost was playing with friends for an hour. So those are ways to use these terms that students understand. They understand the concepts already. They're part of their something that they can relate to, but we're just adding in that academic vocabulary to the principle. Again, these videos are short. They're like less than 2 minutes maybe, but they're all kind of cartoon-ish and can help better understand what some of these terms are. Again, these run 6 through 12. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will tell you in middle school, we kind of go through, it's kind of world history in 6th grade and 7th, because we get up into different time eras in the world, and then 8th grade is around North Carolina. So we talk about those civilizations, those times, and based on where they're at, the societies, how economics or economic principles can be applied to that study of that era or that region. 8th grade is about North Carolina and the nation. Again, how North Carolina plays an economic role, not only in our country, but even internationally when it may come to trade and such. World, American, and civic literacy are your high school courses. Most of our schools have world history for freshmen, 9th grade, American history for 10th grade, civic literacy for 11th grade for juniors. And then EPF, I put all standards because this is the course that my grant and what I focus on the daily, kind of what I focus on the most. Here's a quick example for 6th grade though. The question that the students were asked, how did traders in West Africa and North Africa adapt to their environment? And so we talked to, the teachers will share with their students about trade routes that linked West Africa to North Africa, and how that was their major source of income, getting goods that they needed. And it was difficult for the traders to carry the goods along these trade routes. So they domesticated camels, or domesticated camels were brought to the Sahara because they could go for long stretches without drinking and survive those temperatures and haul the heavy loads. So again, no matter what grade, K through 6 through middle school, they're going to have economic concepts in their social studies courses. This is the EPF. When I say all standards, the whole course is around economics and personal finance. That's what the EPF stands for. Some things that we talk about in EPF are taxes. We do how to complete a 1040. We do I have another slide that goes over everything that is covered in that course. But again, these are a couple of YouTube videos that you can take a look at about what is your student learning in EPF, that senior level course. I'm going to take a big drink and then I'm going to go through this slide. What is EPF? The short answer, it's the class you wish you had in high school. Again, when I started in this role and sharing with people what I was going to be doing, they're like, oh, I wish I had that class in high school. Why didn't they teach us this in high school? This is a semester or year-long social studies course, depending on where your student goes to school. It can be a semester, a year long. It is a graduation requirement for the class of 2024 and beyond. So last year's senior class had to have and pass this course for graduation. Typically, it's taught junior, senior year, but it can be offered to freshmen and sophomores, just depending on the needs of the school. I linked House Bill 924 because if you can't sleep one night and want to dig deeper into North Carolina legislation, You can open up the bill and take a look, but basically this bill was presented started in 2019, but was passed in 2020 to create this course. And within the legislation, the things bulleted there have to be covered in the course. So things like the true cost of credit, talking to our seniors, junior seniors about what it really costs when you put something on your credit card and don't pay it off when it is due. Talking about interest and compounding interest. And the true cost, again, gets into kind of the next couple with, okay, well, how do I choose and how do I manage a credit card? Again, I'll go back to what I mentioned earlier, that our job from K-12 and beyond is to provide students with the information, with the knowledge, with the skills to make good informed decisions. We're not saying, no, you should never have a credit card. We're saying, I'm going to provide you the information to make a decision for you. It is personal. It's personal finance. So we talk to them about how to choose a credit card. We talk to them about interest rates, fees, annual fees, yearly fees, whatever that might look like. We talk to them about some of the incentives that credit card companies may use, like no interest for the first year or the first 6 months. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm not paying interest on this. I'm going to put everything on my credit card for 6 months. But when that time comes and you have not paid it all off, that interest goes back to that first purchase you made. And so that compounding interest can eat you alive. We talk to them how to actually read the information that's provided in your statement. It's probably like a page or two with a bunch of boxes on it that talk about fees and revolving credit and the interest rates that are that go along with that credit card, just so they'll be more informed and make better decisions than I did at 18, going to college and signing up for a credit card in my student union because they were giving away free t-shirts. And at 18, I did not manage that credit card well at all. And so it was a tough call home when I was like, I am in way over my head. Help, parents, what can I do? So yeah, I learned a really hard lesson really early that t-shirt ended up costing me hundreds of dollars. It was not free. No such thing as a free lunch, right? And so we also talk about borrowing money, taking out loans for large purchases like a car or a home. I know that our students, especially junior, senior year, they may have their own jobs. They may be looking to buy a car or looking ahead of graduation. What does that look like for, am I going to rent? Am I going to purchase a home? Is, one of my long-term goals to have a house, to have that home ownership as one of my goals, because it aligns with what is important to me. So we talk about home mortgages. We talk about the interest rates. We talk about the fees. We talk about everything that comes along with it. And we actually do a couple lessons on, is it better to rent or to own? And honestly, there's no right answer because, again, it's personal. So you have to take those factors into play. And also, we talk about how the economy can impact your decision. I have several friends who have children that are graduating from college right now and moving back home because it is impossible for some of the recent graduates to make even qualify, let alone make a mortgage payment right now. And renting just isn't something that they want to do at the moment. And so they're moving back home and saving money. And again, that's a personal decision. But it's not easy right now to, in the housing market, especially in Charlotte, And one of those things that can affect it, the process of applying and getting a home mortgage, is your credit score. So we talk a lot about credit scores and credit reporting. We talk about the factors that go into your credit score, the length of your credit card history or credit use history. We talk about having less than 30% utilization on a card. We talk about the super importance of paying on time, even if it's just your minimum fee, but making those payments on time and reported to the credit bureau to increase your credit score, and what those credit reports look like. We talk about planning and paying for post-secondary education, whether that's college, community college, military, if they are planning to enlist, or if they're going to go straight from college into a field of work where they may need to get just a license or certification. What does that look like? Again, these are personal decisions. And so we talk through with our students, look, what is your long-term goal? What's your short-term goal? What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? And can you afford that lifestyle with your choices that you're making for post-secondary education? Again, like I said, I've been teaching now or in the public education field for this is year 27. I did not go into it for the money. Nobody really talked to me, in the late 90s about what kind of lifestyle do you want to have and is this going to pay for it? But I would not go back and change anything. I absolutely love what I do, but definitely not for the money. Other relevant financial literacy issues, the House bill kind of left that pretty broad because when this was passed, there was no such thing, or not quite in the public sector, around like cryptocurrency, about online gambling, about the image and licensing and naming for athletes. So we left that broad, knowing that the economy and economic issues, personal finance issues are ever changing. So as things change, we talk about scams a lot with our students, how to avoid scams. We also talk to them about, I learned a new word in this work, finfluencers, those that are on social media, especially Instagram or TikTok, that are giving quote unquote financial advice. And we talk through is that really personal? Is that really financial advice that you personally want to take? This person is getting paid to say these things. Who's paying them? Why? We really have them think critically about what is influencing some of their personal finance decisions. So again, I go back to say, culminating from our K-12 experience with economics and personal finance is this EPF course. If you have a student that is in high school, that is a junior, senior, ask them, have you had EPF yet? Do you have EPF? And this is a course, and again, I did not teach, this course wasn't around when I was teaching, but this is one of the few courses that your kid may actually come home and say, guess what I learned in school today? Or, if you're having a conversation and say, what did you learn today? Or what was the best thing, a part about your day? They may say something from this course because it is so relevant, and it is, the students find it very interesting because they can see how it will affect them personally in their currently or in their near future. And then we hopefully have them thinking long-term about their goals in the future. So please ask your students if they're in EPF, what are you learning? It can spark a wonderful conversation. And beyond, I say K-12 and beyond because we do talk to our students about post-secondary choices. Again, what best fits your students' goals? What is their goal for life? What is their goal for their community, for their personal family situations, whatever it might be? And then what's the best financial choice for your student when aligning their goals to their choices for after high school? Something that is kind of new and growing is many colleges and universities are now requiring freshmen to take a personal finance course. I linked two kind of local examples. UNCC does not require a course yet. They're working on it, but they have a whole department called Niner Finances. And students can take sessions. They can have one-on-one kind of advice sessions about how to manage their money as freshmen. They talk to them about student loans. They talk to them about, using a credit card to DoorDash every night or whatever, they may be using that credit card for as a freshman and how that may impact their credit long term. They offer things for the entire student body. They offer some free tax preparation. They had a session last month around free tax preparation. CPCC, they have a guide for all students around personal finance, and they have a course students can take, a business course, personal finance. It's not required yet, but this was directly from their website. You can check out either of those when we share the slide deck with these links. And the last bullet, I just put life because no matter what our students choose after they leave us in CMS, life happens. I've heard a lot of my friends lately say life is lifing. Yes, it is. And a lot of it revolves around your personal finance and choices. So we want to have our students best prepared as possible with the information to make the best informed decisions for themselves. What can I do to support my student? I've mentioned a few things along the way. Again, the easiest thing is begin early. Even young children understand economic concepts. We just have to name it. So, as you're working with your elementary student, even middle school or high school student, you can talk about budgeting. I was listening to a podcast the other day where she was talking about being in a grocery store, and every time the child asked for, oh, Mom, can I get this? She would say, well, is it on our list? And if it wasn't, the answer was no, because they talked about budgeting and making a list before they go to the grocery store, and how we can't deviate from the list because we've budgeted for those items. Instead of just saying no, her answer was no, it's not on the list, or no, it's not in our budget right now. But if that's something that you want, we can talk about how to save and work around savings and budgeting to meet that goal of something you want. So start using those words early on. On the right, there is this is linked, even though there's not a hyperlink there. The picture is linked to a really great article where it goes all the way from toddler to young adult, principles that you can talk to and teach your kid at every age around money and personal finance. Talk to your students about it. I will say I grew up in a family and maybe in a generation, or my parents grew up in a generation where we didn't talk about money. You don't talk about money, religion, or politics. And so I grew up knowing little about making wise personal financial decisions. I may have seen it, they may have modeled it, but they never talked to me about it. So there's a Cambridge report, or Cambridge University report, that's linked here too, that really says the foundational money habits are formed by the age of 7. So the sooner you start helping your children build good money habits, the better. And that may even just be having the conversation, starting with talking about it. If you don't know how to start the conversation, you yourself want to learn more, this is where I highly, and I say this about myself, I had to be a lifelong learner with personal finance because, again, it changes. It's ever changing. But I will say this is a topic that is very relevant. There are so many resources available that it's kind of hard to navigate and know, like, unfortunately, they don't all have your best interest at heart. So you may have to do a little vetting if you just kind of Google personal finance. But my best advice, again, I'm not a financial planner. This is not financial advice, but is just start where you're at. Do a reality check and make a plan. It's never too early, never too late. Find support. And that may look different. It may be with a religiously affiliated group that is doing some work around financial. It may be a community effort. It may just be your friend and you're holding each other a little accountable around budgeting. But one thing I did put here in this last link, and we can also put it in the chat as a link. I vetted, it started out to be a 1-pager, ended up being a 2-pager, but I vetted some resources for you. All of them are free except the books that are listed at the very end, but they're all free and they offer a wide variety of supports, whether it's you personally looking for purchasing a home, building credit, restoring credit, what to how to talk to your students about personal financial literacy. There's a lot of resources from the community. There's a lot of nonprofits that do work around personal financial literacy. So I would say, again, do a reality check, and wherever you are, it's okay. Don't feel guilty, don't feel ashamed, but make a plan and start working on it. And share your journey with your student as much as you feel comfortable and as much as you want to share, depending on their age. But make it a family goal. Make a family goal to save and budget for. But one last reminder, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Here's the link for feedback. We would love to hear from you. We use this information to determine what our next Lunch and Learn may be around, what you guys are interested in hearing more about. And the winner will be contacted via email on Friday, the 25th. And I will stop sharing screen and throw it back over to Molly, and we'll open it up for Q&A.
Crystal, thank you so much for such informative information and providing that understanding of what is available to our students and how we can best support them as we ensure that we are making sure that our students know what's available to them to move beyond any secular systems of economics they may experience. At this time, we do not have any questions in our Q&A. Families, if there is any questions, please submit them through the feedback form and we'll make sure they get to Miss Crystal Shue and be answered accordingly. Thank you so much for your time and engagement today. And we look forward to continuing to partner through future Family Academy sessions. I hope that everyone has a terrific Thursday.